Hi, this is Political News in 5, and today is October 30th, 2022. I'm Aisha Osori, and this is a bonus episode of Political News in 5, slightly longer version. Now, the first thing I'm talking about is the escalating violence around politics and elections. Last week, the campaign convoy for the PDP gubernatorial candidate Olajide Adediran, otherwise known as Jandor, was attacked and shot at, and people were wounded. This was following trending reports of some men who were putting up PDP posters around Lagos and were also attacked. So you're seeing a theme here: Lagos, Lagos, Lagos. Now, it's clear from all indications that the 2023 elections are going to be violent, or put another way, that the people who want to maintain status quo are planning to use violence to keep people away and depress the vote, because there is a sense that many Nigerians want to exercise their mandate. Some are even linking the heightened sense of insecurity in the federal capital, Abuja, to possible attempts to trigger Section 1353 of the 1999 Constitution that allows the National Assembly to approve, at the request of the president, a decision to postpone elections if there is a sense that the country is at war. Now, it does seem as if the country is at war. President Buhari has come out to give assurances, but some of these assurances ring really hollow, considering that the FCT has felt really unsafe, especially since the July jailbreak at Kuje prisons. Now, one would like to think that if his words were true and he really cared about security and democracy, as he said he did in his recent last trip abroad in South Korea, that he would he would question his party members who are championing the use of violence in the 2023 elections. And one example is a Borno State House of Assembly member, Gajiram, who apparently has said that, whatever it takes to win the 2023 elections, that's what they're going to do. Whether it's killing, if it entails killing people, then so be it. Now, this man has not been held to account by anybody. As far as I know, his party hasn't called him to account. One would like to think that the police will call him in for question to check his threats. But in the meantime, it's important to point out that one, Borno State obviously is the same state where the vice presidential candidate for APC comes from. So there is a sense of do and die. And two, that Borno State has typically always been in opposition to the party at the center. So meaning between 1999 and 2015, while it was ANPP, APP who ruled in Borno, it was PDP at the center. Maybe it's time for Borno to move back to opposition, and they sense that and want to forestall that happening. Now, it's also important to point out that 1999 elections were one of the most violent as well in history. We saw an escalation of violence, rapes, attacks on staff, election officers, and it was also the lowest voter turnout we've had since 1999. And violence was one of the reasons why people stayed away. Now, SBM tracked in the last 4 months leading to the 2019 elections in February, over 60 incidents across the country that led to over 230 people's deaths. That's just within a 4-month period. Now, if we use that as an example, we can see that it's very likely that we're going to have something similar in 2023, and this is the time to make sure that we stop that. This is the time for the Peace Commission committee led by Bishop Kuka and General Abdulsalam to do something more than just get presidential candidates to sign empty promises. We need state governors, we need the police, we need the army, we need other stakeholders who are involved in being merchants of violence around elections to also be at the table discussing how to make sure we can have mechanisms that will hold people individually responsible for any election violence in their state on election day. That's what will get us moving. Now, the second thing I would like to talk about is the parties engaging with women. The presidential candidates engaging women. So, for example, last week in Abuja, there were 2 events that were held, hosted by women to engage presidential candidates. Now, one would wish that it's not just presidential candidates who have to talk about what their plans are for women. These types of conversations should be happening as well on the state level. Now, at these events, Atiku did not show up for any of these events and did not send his vice presidential candidate to represent him. For one of the events, Shetima was there to represent Tinubu, but only Obi attended both events. Now, Obi used the opportunity to talk about how he's included women politically, how he had a deputy governor that was female, his chief of staff, the state auditor general, and he had 4 female commissioners. Good job, but still far from 35% of a cabinet. And one would like to think that Obi would please release his manifesto soon so that we can see what his plans are, not just for women, but for other Nigerians. Now, it made me think about Atiku and Tinubu and what their engagement with women on the political and governance sector has been. Now, with Atiku, it's hard to see what appointments he made as vice president between 1999 and 2007, but he is credited with being the one to recruit Dora Akunyi and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala into the Obasanjo administration. He's also known to have supported some women's political ambitions, such as Aisha Al-Hassan, who ran for APC, who flew the APC ticket for the Taraba gubernatorial elections in 2015. She didn't win, but he supported her. Now, those things for me are not enough for Atiku, especially when right now he's in the US with a very male-looking team leading his engagement with different departments of the US. So for example, in one of his meetings, he was meeting with a female assistant secretary for Bureau of African Affairs. And one would like to think that she would have pointed out the lack of gender diversity in his team. He needs to do better. Now, with Tinubu is credited typically with being one of the people who favors women as deputy governors around the Southwest. And he also had a female deputy governor for his first term, Koforola Bokono, but that relationship was very contentious, and she's been on record questioning his credentials as a Democrat and also accusing him of using rigging to manipulate elections and keep power in Lagos State. Now, Tinubu does have a manifesto that has a special section on women empowerment, including an old promise about making sure that he can use legislation to ensure 35% representation of women in appointments. And a very cursory look at the internet shows no indication that when he was governor between 1919 and 2007, he had 30% or 35% of women in his own cabinet. Right now, he's considered to be a godfather of Lagos State. And if you look at the current Lagos State Executive Council, it only has 26% women. 11 women, 6 commissioners out of 42 people on that list. So if he can't even ensure 35% of women representation in Lagos, why should we believe he'll do that for the country? Besides, we are not sure that he actually even supported the campaigns in March to ensure that there were 5 gender bills, 2 of which would have done a lot to further women's political participation. If he didn't support that, then why would he suddenly support it when he's president? We need to be wary of these campaign promises that are being made. We need to be more discerning. We need to do our history. We need to do the research and make our decisions based on that. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about today is just some general updates on the elections. So, for example, it's looking like APC will not have any candidates for the 2023 elections in Rivers State. And let's point out that in 2019, they also did not have a gubernatorial candidate in APC. What's going on there, and who benefits when courts decide to cancel the entire primaries for a political party? Let's keep watching that. Second, INEC has said that they've finished cleaning up the voter register, and of the 12 million new registrants that registered during the continuous voter registration, they're cancelling the registration of 2.7 million. That's about 22% of those who registered are invalidated for double registration, being underage, and other things that violated the criteria for registration. Now, one thing that excited me about seeing the breakdown is to see that women are slightly in the lead when it comes to the number of people that registered. And let's hope that women can translate this lead in new registrants into actual votes on election day. But speaking to violence and elections, of course, if elections are going to be violent, many women who are typically the caretakers of children in their family are not likely to go to the polls. They might not be able to leave their kids at home, and they would definitely not want to expose them to violence on election day. So we need to do something about that. Finally, there's a Fitch report going around suggesting that Bola Tinubu is going to win the election. Just to point out that if you've seen that report, it seems convincing, but it's a fake report. It's not the real Fitch agency that's a credit rating agency. This is a wannabe who's just trying to, of course, take on the 3 previous polls that have been made public that show Obi in the lead. That's it for me on Political News in 5. Do have a good week ahead. Stay well and see you next week. Bye.